Welcome to Xiao Zhan Universe. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video with your friends. The hushed reverence of the art gallery opening was a balm for Tan Songyun's soul. She drifted past canvases, appreciating the interplay of light and shadow, the whispered critiques. She was here for the art, but also for a certain presence, the easy charisma of Su Kai, whom she'd heard would be attending. A quiet thrill sparked within her. Then, a figure stepped into her peripheral vision. Wang Yibo. He stood before a stark, abstract painting, his gaze intense, almost predatory. He was an anomaly in the room, radiating an electric stillness that seemed to draw all ambient sound into itself. When he turned, his eyes, dark and fathomable, fixed on her. The casual murmur of the crowd, the clink of glasses, the distant murmur of a string quartet, all seemed to diminish, becoming faint echoes. The air around her grew colder, though no one else seemed to notice. He didn't walk towards her, he simply was there, a stride removed, as if the space between them had folded. "Stay away from Su Kai," he said, his voice a low, resonant hum that cut through the silence he had imposed. Tan Songyun blinked, a faint flush rising to her cheeks. "Excuse me. Do I know you?" A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the air. The painting behind Yibo, an explosion of violent reds and blacks, seemed to pulse, its colors deepening, swirling with an unnatural energy. "You don't," Yibo replied, his eyes unwavering. "But I know what clings to him, what he fights." He raised a hand, not to touch, but to gesture. And the world shifted. The gallery, moments ago a haven of polite society, began to fray at the edges. The polished marble floor rippled like disturbed water, reflecting the chandeliers as elongated, distorted blurs. The hushed chatter of the patrons turned into a discordant chorus of whispers, each voice a sliver of anxiety, fear, and unspoken dread. Tan Songyun felt a sudden, inexplicable weight in her chest, a profound sense of foreboding that wasn't hers, yet clung to her like a shroud. She gasped, her gaze snapping to a nearby couple. Their elegant clothes seemed to darken, the vibrant hues leaching away, and their faces, once smooth with pleasant smiles, were momentarily etched with lines of profound weariness, their eyes shadowed with a fleeting, desperate sadness. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but the impression lingered, a chill that seeped into her bones. Yibo lowered his hand. The floor settled, the colors returned to the couple's faces, and the whispers dissolved back into polite background noise. "That," he said, his voice now a quiet, intense thread, "is a sliver of what follows him, what he endures." Tan Songyun stared, her mind reeling. What was that?" "He is a conduit," Yibo explained, his words like sharp, precise cuts. "A lightning rod for the world's despair. He draws it in, filters it, keeps it from overwhelming others. He's a dam, holding back an ocean of human suffering." He gestured again, a subtle tilt of his head towards a distant corner of the gallery where Su Kai had just entered, his radiant smile a beacon, unaware of the conversation or the invisible currents swirling around him. As Yibo spoke, the air around Su Kai began to shimmer. Not with light, but with a barely visible distortion field. To Tan Songyun, it looked as if the very molecules around him were vibrating at an impossibly high frequency, causing the light to bend, creating ghostly, fleeting outlines within his aura. She saw them, not clear figures, but presences. Wispy, tendril-like forms, made of coalesced shadow and subtle, draining color, that curled and unfurled, constantly attempting to latch onto him. They were the distilled anxieties of the crowd, the echoes of forgotten pains, the amorphous manifestations of the despair that sought to corrupt his light. One particularly thick tendril, like a plume of black smoke, detached itself from the distortion field around Su Kai and drifted, almost lazily, towards a nearby vase of lilies. As it passed over the vibrant white petals, they withered, turning brittle and brown in an instant, their life force visibly draining away. The tendril then dissipated into the air, as if sated. Tan Songyun watched, horrified. Her mind screamed against the impossible, yet her eyes had witnessed the undeniable. "He pushes them back." Yibo's voice was a steady undercurrent. "He transmutes them. But it takes everything. And every connection he forms, every person who gets too close, offers the despair a new vector, a new weakness to exploit. It will bleed through him into you. It will wear you down, infect your joy, steal your peace. He took another step closer, and the ambient temperature in the room plummeted, a coldness that felt less like air and more like an emotion. The vibrant paintings on the walls seemed to darken, their colors muted, their joyful scenes subtly twisted into something mournful. Tan Songyun felt a sudden crushing wave of apathy, a profound lack of caring that threatened to snuff out all her thoughts. It was the insidious touch of the despair, amplified by Yibo, forcing her to experience its true nature. The subtle, draining fatigue she felt, the sudden emptiness of the gallery, the dimming lights, was a concentrated dose of what Su Kai lived with every day. "That's just a taste," Yibo said, his voice flat, devoid of malice, yet terrifying in its clinical assessment. "He's fighting it. Constantly. And if you get too close, it will use you as leverage, a weakness, a target. It will use your joy to fuel its hunger, and your despair to break him." Then, Yibo's eyes, which had been reflecting the chilling reality he perceived, suddenly softened, a flicker of something akin to pleading in their depths. "He doesn't need more burdens. He needs protection. Or he will burn out. Completely." The oppressive cold lifted. The paintings on the walls regained their vibrancy. The gallery buzzed again with its usual polite energy. The lilies in the vase, however, remained withered and brown, a stark, undeniable testament to the momentary breach in reality. Tan Songyun stood frozen, her heart pounding, the blood rushing in her ears. She looked from the dead flowers to Wang Yibo, who now seemed like an ordinary man again, albeit one with an unnerving stillness. Then her gaze drifted to Su Kai, still smiling brightly, oblivious, across the room. She saw him not as the charming man she'd been drawn to, but as a figure constantly shrouded in an invisible, consuming struggle. She had just been given a glimpse into a world she could not have conceived, a reality existing beneath the mundane, a truth that would haunt her. She understood. The warning wasn't a threat from Yibo, but a stark, terrifying revelation of what connecting with Su Kai truly meant. It wasn't about him being dangerous, but about the profound, unseen danger that clung to him, and what it would inevitably cost her. Slowly, Tan Songyun nodded, her face pale, a cold dread settling deep within her. The art gallery no longer seemed beautiful, it felt like a fragile shell, barely holding back an unimaginable darkness. The memory of the withered flowers in the art gallery was a ghost that haunted Tan Songyun. The mundane reality of the city felt flimsy, a thin veil over a churning, unseen darkness. Wang Yibo's warning had been a horrifying revelation, but her rational mind fought back, insisting on an explanation, a glimpse of her own. She had to see Su Kai again, to be sure. She had to test the limits of what she had seen. She found him at a quaint cafe, a place of soft light and the warm aroma of coffee. He was laughing with a friend, his smile as bright and infectious as she remembered. For a moment, she was reassured. The world felt normal again. She took a step closer, a hesitant smile on her face. Then, a wave of sensation hit her. It was not a physical impact, but a sudden, overwhelming emotional echo. The air, previously so calm, was now a cacophony of raw feeling. The barista's frustration with a stubborn coffee machine felt like a physical thrum against her temples. The quiet melancholy of an elderly man reading a book in the corner manifested as a cold knot in her stomach. A young couple's anxiousness over a pending job offer filled her with a sense of dread. She was drowning in the unfiltered feelings of every single person in the room. It was a sensory overload of pure, distilled emotion, amplified and broadcast by the invisible force Yibo had warned her about. Her head spun, and she instinctively clutched at the edge of a table to steady herself. She looked to Su Kai. He was still laughing, seemingly oblivious to the storm of emotion swirling around him, but she now saw the constant, monumental effort it must take for him to remain that calm. The laughter, his radiant energy, it was a shield, a dam holding back an ocean of feeling that would break an ordinary person. Just as the emotional echo became too much to bear, and she felt her knees buckle, a figure moved into her field of vision. It was Wang Yibo. He stood by the cafe's large window, his gaze locking with hers, a deep, sorrowful understanding in his eyes. He didn't speak. He simply raised a hand, not to warn her, but to show her. The cafe dissolved. The tables and chairs remained, but they were no longer solid objects. They were translucent, shimmering with a soft, gray light. The other patrons, the barista, the elderly man, the young couple, were no longer people. They were translucent, ghostly figures, their forms wavering, their life force visibly draining from them, a shimmering golden light siphoning away into the air. She could now see the tendrils of the despair for what they were, not just wisps of shadow, but solid, coiling ropes of pure darkness that had attached themselves to the figures, silently siphoning their vitality. The coffee in the elderly man's cup was a swirling vortex of apathy. The book in his hands was not a book, but a symbol of his fleeting memories, its pages turning to dust. The floor was no longer tile but a solid, oppressive substance made of apathy and regret. This was the truth. This was the battlefield. The cafe was not a haven of peace. It was a feeding ground for an invisible parasite, and Su Kai was the only thing holding it at bay. Yibo had pulled back a veil, showing her the world not as she saw it, but as it truly was, a breathtaking and terrifying mind-bending scene of a hidden war. The despair, sensing her fear and her proximity, recognized her as a weakness, a new opening. A particularly thick, black tendril detached itself from the scene and lunged directly for her. It solidified, taking the form of a shadowy figure made of raw despondency, its face a blank, empty void. It was no longer an echo or a distortion. It was a direct, terrifying attack on her being. "Run!" Yibo's voice, not a whisper but a powerful thought, broke through the cacophony. Tan Songyun didn't need to be told twice. She turned, a scream catching in her throat, and ran for the door. The floor of the cafe felt like thick, clinging mud, a viscous substance of sorrow trying to slow her down. She could feel the cold, empty presence of the shadow behind her, its fingers reaching for her spirit. Wang Yibo stood his ground. He didn't fight the shadow with a physical motion. He closed his eyes, and a brilliant, blinding white light erupted from his core, not a beam, but a silent, pervasive wave of pure presence. The light struck the shadowy figure of the despair, not destroying it, but holding it at bay, pushing it back, a singular, powerful act of defiance. The light he projected was a wall, a shield, an immovable force against the emptiness of the despair. Tan Songyun burst out of the cafe doors, gasping for breath. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, and she felt the oppressive weight lift. She finally stopped, leaning against a building, her legs trembling. She turned, her gaze snapping back to the cafe, to the window where she had seen the horrifying battle. She could no longer see the translucent figures, the shadowy tendrils, or Yibo's brilliant light. She saw only Su Kai, smiling and waving goodbye to his friend, and Yibo, walking away, his back straight, his shoulders carrying an invisible weight. She understood. The warning wasn't a threat from Yibo, but a terrifying reality check. The war was real, and it was being fought in silence, every day. Su Kai was a brilliant, beautiful dam, and Yibo was the lone sentinel protecting him, pushing back an unimaginable darkness so the rest of the world could live in peace. And she, Tan Songyun, was a witness to a war she could never be part of, a sacred duty too heavy for her to bear. The cost of getting close was not worth what was at stake. She could only watch from afar, with a newfound reverence for the two men who held the world together.